Yo all. Welcome back to another episode of Gambit, and in this one, it's a little bit all over the place. In the previous episode, I had just finished with the, well, not really finished, but I came up with an idea for the queue, and like I said in the last episode, I may go back in and change it. I'm not quite sure, but in this episode, the main focus is trying to get the beginning of the station, and I'm building this thing from, I guess, the ground up, kinda. So, starting with the structure, I found that physically building the steel structure is the easiest way for me to start because it gives me a better idea of where the walls are going to go and where the ADA elevator is going to go, things like that. And what I'm using here is it's some beams on the Theme Maker's Toolkit. If I remember, I'll put a link down in the description for the guy who made this. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but these beams are fantastic. They're very low in terms of, in terms of size for megabytes, and very useful. And they don't reflect light. They don't reflect light too much like the art shapes, but they also aren't like a matte finish. So they reflect light just enough to have the appearance of steel. So that's why I'm using these beams, because the art shapes just would have been too much. And after using these shapes, I'm definitely going to go back into Fury 325 and redo almost all of the scenery that I've done and go back in and use these beams because it'll allow me to have more flexibility in terms of the detailing. So for inspiration of the station building, I'm using Wild Eagle at Dollywood, and it has a majestic sort of architecture and I like it a lot. Plus, I think I'm going to have this roller coaster be mostly in the mountains, so the style of architecture will fit perfectly. Now, and again, I'm using steel instead of wood because I can get away with a little bit more structural work with using the steel. I can use less. Now, by the end of this episode, it's going to look like a lot. But for now, it's just starting with the A-frames, the basic shape. I did a lot of sketches in my notebook, just looking at the pictures on Google of Wild Eagle, the station, and while it was being constructed, so that I'd have a better understanding of building this from a structural standpoint. I don't have a degree in engineering, so I'm using sort of my best judgment in terms of where I feel the most weight would need to be supported, especially when just basing it on the station building of Wild Eagle. Now, I'm not doing an exact copy. You may notice the A-frame here is basically exactly what Wild Eagle has, but I'm redoing a bunch of, I'm kind of rearranging everything. And right there, that was a cut because I guess I was flip-flopping back and forth between what I wanted, back and forth between pictures, and basically deleting everything and starting over. So I just cut out a bunch of footage. Keep in mind, I've cut out a lot of footage. There was almost 5 hours of me building this thing, going back and forth with what I wanted. So I've cut out a lot of it, and I've sped this up so it's faster than the previous two videos. It's, I think, 8 times the speed, whereas the other two videos were, I think, either 250 times the speed. And I think I like this new speed better because I can make the videos shorter, get a lot more done. And yeah, I was kind of worried that I move around a lot when I build, so hopefully it's not too nauseating for anyone. If you feel like it's too fast, let me know. But I asked my buddy Mass Bandit how he speeds up his time lapses, and he says usually 8 times. So that's what I've tried here. What's kind of sad is after building this station, I redid my exit entirely and beneath the gift shop and beneath the station. So I didn't have to rebuild the station per se. I just rearranged the placement of some of these A-frames, and the larger A-frames I had to make bigger, but I rearranged it entirely. And so in the next episode, I'm gonna give you some cinematics of the or actually no, I may include those cinematics at the end of this episode. But I did end up redoing the station structure, and I was able to get rid of some pieces as well as kind of have a final idea of what I want. especially when I match it to my sketches on paper. Because you can see how some of the vertical beams are just going directly through the path, and the ones on the exit side of the queue, the guests, they don't really walk through them. But I don't have a time lapse of me doing any of the changes after what you see. So between the end of this video and the cinematics, there's no time lapse. I just kind of did it all on my own time off camera. And I did that because I actually spent 8 hours doing that, because I was trying to work with the path system. I tried doing 2-meter staircases, which the guests will not go down from an exit path or on a normal path. The guests won't go down a staircase that's 2 meters wide. For some reason, I don't know. It's just probably how the paths are programmed, but they will go down a 3-meter staircase. I was able to make that work. I tried doing a ramp instead of stairs as an exit, but then that would defeat the purpose of me building an elevator. And plus, the ramp takes up a lot more space. So I decided just to go with the 3-meter stairs. The stairs you see there are 4-meter. They're too big in my opinion. So again, none of that has been filmed in time lapse. So there's not much to talk about. Mainly just figuring out exactly where the beams are going to connect realistically was the biggest challenge of trying to build the station. Now something like Fury 325, that has a very simple structure. So I was able to, in my older version of Fury, I think I actually have a time-lapse of that. In my older version of Fury, that was easy to figure out. But this, it's really architecturally sound, so it needs to look good and look realistic in terms of structure. The only thing I realized after this is that technically your operator needs to be able to see the lift and the brakes and the transfer, so I'm just going to pretend that this coaster was upgraded and they have screens to look at all of that. So I'm gonna build an operator booth entirely. But later on, after all this time lapse, I tried putting the operator booth on the other side and having the exit behind the operator booth where it is now. It wouldn't work because I want the elevator on that side, and then I had problems with trying to figure out the paths and how to connect them. And you'll see in the cinematics just how I did that. But again, it wasn't worth doing any time-lapse because it was just so much of me going back and forth, deleting, redoing, going back to save files, and just trying to get the paths to work right. This part here, these are just little overhangs that hang off the side of the main structure. So it's not too complicated, but I had to go back in, and any extra beams that I had, I went back in and deleted. Some of these A-frames I did rebuild and then copy around to make it easier and to decrease the part count. I think this building, the structure itself ended up being probably 1,800 pieces. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know it's well over 1,000 pieces. It's really hard to see, but I did try putting my own rails on the track itself for the wheels to roll on, and it looks really good. I'm just trying to debate if I want to try doing that. Well, I know I want to do that for the entire layout, but I don't know if I'm going to time-lapse that or not. It would just be me endlessly placing stuff on the track. So I may do a time-lapse of that, but it's going to look good. It's really hard to see it, but you can barely see it in front of the train. I have some really dark gray rails on or covering the track, like what a GCI has thick rails on the top, and then for the side friction wheels, there's rails as well on the wood, and then there's even one on the bottom of the track, I think. So I've achieved that there, and it might be in the cinematics, I don't know. Well, we're just about halfway through our 20-minute video. I don't know what else to talk about. This whole video is just me building the station, and there's nothing else that's being built besides the station structure. I guess in terms of other projects, my other big one is Happily Ever After, which is the fireworks spectacular at Walt Disney's Magic Kingdom here in Florida. And so far that one's coming along well. I haven't worked on it since I started Gambit. The last thing I was doing was there's 2 towers on either side of the castle, and the projections also show onto those towers. So I'm using the area lights and kind of doing that in the game, since I can't get billboards to be that small, or at least look good, because those towers are right in front of the guests. So I'm using the lights and putting the lights inside the towers, and it's reflecting it decent. So I have videos of that, just showing little tests that I've done. So that's what I was in the process of working on before I started Gambit. So once I finished doing the lights for those towers for the entire show, then I'm probably going to do the fireworks. The only thing about that is I had to, I'm not sure how I'm going to do the moving spotlights because they cause so much lag in the game. I'm still figuring out what I want to do. Okay, here I'm going through and getting rid of a lot of extra beams that aren't necessary. So just mainly to decrease the part count, and I'm just looking around, trying to figure out, okay, which beams can I delete, which ones do I need to return, add back. Because there's also another framework on top of all of this for the roof itself. So I may make that as a separate building, so it's easier for me to go in, delete what I need. The main focus here is the structure. And it's the easiest way to do it is to have your actual structure be one building, and then anything on top of it be a separate building, any walls be a separate building, just so it's easier to go in and edit what you need without deleting something else accidentally. Most of the station itself will be open air, and then the gift shop below will be mostly enclosed. The elevator I'm going to have right behind the operator booth. However, that overhang there, you'll see in the cinematics I moved it so I could fit the elevator shaft there. I haven't built the elevator shaft yet, but I'm going to build it similar to how I'm doing this, where I'll start with a structure and then put everything else around it. Sometimes I'll turn it to night mode so I can see what's highlighted easier. That way I don't accidentally move something else. But everything you see here, it mostly stayed the same. If anything, some of the spacing between the different A-frames would have changed, and the position of some of the vertical columns would have also changed a bit, not too much. But I had to do something because I had changed the exit path entirely, and I was even able to add a little seating area because a lot of guests, they've been waiting in line, and they're going to want to sit down when they get off the ride. So they can sit down at the exit or sit down next to the bridge area. And in the next time lapse, you'll see that I had started the bridge area and trying to get a lot of the structural foundation work done before I start any custom supporting of the physical ride itself. That's why I'm doing the station structure. The whole station area is basically man-made. It's all foundation. And the pre-lift area will be directly on the ground itself, but most of the paths, everything, that's why I'm trying to get all the path stuff done first. That way I know where I want the foundations before I build any of the custom supports. The station floor itself, I'm going to mask with a floor pattern, probably some wood. And the rails there, I'm probably going to put my own mask over those as well. I may go with the style of the fence similar to what's on Wild Eagle. Looks like it's a flat fence, but it looks like roots of a tree. I may go with something like that. I'm still not quite sure. I'll have to look around at the pieces in the game, put some stuff together, figure out what I want off camera. A lot of times I'll build stuff off camera just to test it before I go on camera and actually build it in the game. And we're just about done with the time-lapse portion of the video, so it's just me finalizing some of the positions of some of the stuff, which unfortunately I ended up changing again anyway, but you'll see that in the cinematics. So I hope you enjoyed the time-lapse and enjoy the nice cinematic shots that I have here in just a short bit. So thank you all for watching. Make each day count, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye, everyone.